going on, guys? Big welcome to you all to our channel. We are team crushing the meta. As you can see from the playmats, we are here with a deck profile that really work with Zoa this time. So we have already covered up Great Nature for standard, which would be my Excel clan, and that clan, Great Nature, was the clan that was able to win the World Championship Series for 2018. And for standard, of course. For premium, the deck was able to win was actually Darkface. So today I'm here for you guys with the deck profile on Darkface. Of course, it's actually a coincidence that we have both those decks, but most of the time I really want to have a deck that really irritates your opponent when playing against it. Like I had Dominate in the G era, and now it was time to make Gredora. I already had all the G cards, the cards from the G era, and I just needed the V cards to make this deck, which is not really that expensive to make. There's also a story behind this card being an SP, but I will tell you later. So let's jump actually into the deck, and after that let me explain why or what I chose for some cards. Of course, this is my take on the deck, so this is not the deck that won the World Championship Series, keep that in mind. Alright, so going through the grade 3s. Of course, we are playing Gredora. Gredora in Darkface or in any other great Megacolony deck is a very strong card. It's the card that gives you your resources back, and it's a card that really get under your opponent's skin. Why? Because it's just getting your resources back, and at the same time having the ability that your opponent cannot call in the same column, getting their counter blast for your counter charge. She's just amazing, and that's why we also are giving her her own sleeves, she being queen, and of course she's a queen. Alright, so for the other grade 3s that you want to play, because you really don't want to ride Gredora first. Why? Because we are of course playing the Antlion combo with Zoa. By playing this combo, you really need a grade 3 in your soul, and you don't want to ride from a Gredora to a Gredora because you're just minusing yourself, you're plussing nothing. But you also don't want to do that because you want at least to have one Gredora in your hand to ultimate stride. And by already riding twice, you have less chance to be able to ultimate stride. That's why you want to ride into an Antlion first. The Antlion actually is pretty good ride target if you go to him first. Why? Because one, he gives you the protect marker, so that's good. It's an out against some decks and it's always a plus. And also you just have him in your soul to use for the Gredora or for his own skill later on. So yeah, it's a very good card in my opinion, and it's the only one that you want to play in here as from the V series. So playing him at 3 is more than enough. You need one to finish your opponent off, and you need one to ride in the early game. If you don't have him, then you could ride any of these. As you see, I wanted to play all the Darkfaces. The original Darkface is actually very ironic card for me to play because I play Spike Brother, and this card could single-handedly destroy a Spike Brother turn by soul blasting, let's say 6 or 8 cards. So that's why, especially if you don't play the Axe Diver. If you play the Axe Diver, then Axe Diver is a pain in the ass for him. But it's the good card to run against the right decks. And you could always get him to your hands because you have your Stride Followers and you draw a lot with your Overwhelm. So this deck really generates hands advantage like crazy. And then we have the new Darkface, or the newer Darkface, because he was always in the series with her in the anime. I just wanted to play him, but it's also a very good card. I'm testing him out and I thought, well, this card is really good. You could even put him at 2 or more if you want to, because it's really good. What he does actually is he makes the right columns. He's 21, boosted by a 7k, he could hit Force by the exact number, but at the same time he works great with Overwhelm. Why? Because she prohibits your opponent from calling in the column, and he said that column cannot restand, so that's perfect. They work really good together. And that's actually it for the grade 3 lineup. I'm playing 9, I think that's more than enough because I'm also playing Stride Followers and I'm playing grade 2. This could help you to stride with. Talking about the grade 2s, let's just jump into them. The first card that I play in here are 4 copies of the Hercules. Hercules, in my opinion, is a very good card and puts a lot of pressure on your opponent. What he does actually is just the counter charge engine, but also giving the power that you do. Most importantly is when you have a critical trigger in your drive check and you give that crit to one of your other Vanguards in the front row and you have him on the other side, and then they would have to guard this and take the crits, or guard both, which is just a lot of cards from their hand, or take this and guard the crit. By taking this, you get the counter charge, but you're also making the other attack stronger, which means they would have to give even more cards from their hand to guard. So it's really a pain in the ass for your opponent to deal with a Hercules, especially if you have two of them in the front row. That's just overkill. Another card that I like to run in here is this card. This is something that we got late in the G era. What he does is when you don't have the right grade 3 in your hand, he becomes a 5k. It's just once when you place him. That's a good thing, because sometimes you want your grade 2 to not hit your opponent, and that's why you sometimes use that skill for your own advantage. The other skill is he get, of course, the 6k, which makes him a 16. Again, the same as the Darkface. This card 16 or the 21 boosted by the 7k makes it the perfect number to hit force. So that's why you want to play him. He's just like a powerhouse, but at the same time, he's just in there to help you to see where you want to go with the deck and if you want to give your opponent damage or not. Okay, so then you have 4 spots left for your grade 2 lineup. It's really up to you what you want to play. I play 2 copies of Water Gang and 2 copies of Blitzer. The thing is, both of them do actually almost the same. Well, this card is good to put there in the early game because his skill is not GB related when you want to stride with him. So that's a good thing. The only thing that you need to keep in mind is you have to stride into something with a Dark Device, which the Overwhelm is. So that's a good thing. You could always go to her, especially as your first stride. She's almost always your first stride if you have the counterblast for her. And then you have the Water Gang, which is good. If you put in the early game, you could just attack with him the same, and then when he restands, you just use his skill to draw the 2 cards, and then you could countercharge that with the Hercules. He is really good to have in the early game. In the late game, it's a bit different. You want your powerhouses more, but it still could work. The good thing about him is also that he also help with stunning your opponent Vanguards, especially if you have him in the front row. Actually, only if you have him in the front row. Right, so that's it for the grade 2 lineup. Let's jump into the grade 1s. For the grade 1s, there are a lot of good choices that you could choose from. For my countercharge engine, I wanted to go with 2 copies of him and only 1 copy of him. The good thing about the V series cards is they have the 10k. The bad thing about this card is only works if you put him in the right time. While they work perfectly to fill up your soul, to give you the counter charge, they are really a pain in the ass for your opponent to get rid of, because if you have a Darkface Vanguard, they cannot be targeted. But at the same time, giving you the counter charge and the soul charge at the right time is perfect. Although sometimes you want him. If you don't have any counterblast and you have these cards in your hand, then he becomes better, which is also good. That's why I play 1 copy of him. Again, you're drawing a lot of cards, so it's really not that hard to get the right cards into your hand. Next, I like to play 2 copies of the Brilliant Blitzer. This is a very, very good card playing against the right deck. It's a card that could change the whole game, going from you losing to you winning, or just mess with your opponent that your opponent really wants to just quit. Playing against the right deck, this card could be a huge difference or make a huge difference, but again, if you play against something that does not have a reselling Vanguard, then this card does nothing. It's only 5k and a 6k, so it's just discarded with a PG or ride it in the early game. It's also good. But again, it's a good card if you're playing against the right deck. Then I'm playing 2 copies of Phantom Black. Phantom Black with the Antlion, of course, we all know that combo. It's really, really strong. Especially when you go into Zoa and you just want to destroy your opponent. Because if you don't win on the Zoa turn, then you cannot win, because this deck doesn't really have an out if you don't stride. The Antlion cannot do it by itself, and yeah, that's when the deck falls apart. So that's why you play 2 copies of Fanta Black. More than 2, it's not needed, because Antlion by himself could finish your opponent off, but having the Fanta Black in there is also good. For the Stride Folders, I play one of each, the different arts. I like both of them. And the thing is, you really use them to get the right grade 3 to your hand. So it's not only searching for your grade 3s, but most of the time help you to stride, but also search the right grade 3. And talking about searching for the grade 3s, of course we have 4 copies of Hernet. Riding this card in the early game is perfect. It just gives you advantage, you're just plussing. And when you have him in the back row or in the front row, because he works attacking or boosting, you could search the right grade 3 to your hand as well. If you don't get the right grade 3, then you don't have to use the skill, so that's a good thing. That's it for the grade 1 lineup. Let's go for the triggers. The triggers are pretty much basic. There are a lot of good triggers in Megacolony that you could use, and I've tried different builds, but I ended up with actually the most basic trigger lineup. So before we go to the starter, because there are also a lot of different starters that you could use, let's just jump into the trigger lineup. So I'm playing 8 crits. Why? Because it's really good. The thing is, they have a lot of shield, and they also have the power, and at the same time they are crits. So it's a way for you to win the game. When you attack with Overwhelm and you have the extra drive check and the crit, and let's say that your opponent is sitting on 2 damage, in the 4th drive check you get 2 crits, that's just game over for your opponent. And it does happen, believe me, it does happen. But also just getting a crit in the drive check is good, in the early game is good, and you're really not afraid of your opponent having enough counter blasts. I mean, this deck is just a pain in the butt for your opponent, and having the crits does help. I understand if you want to play more stands, because the stands have very good abilities, and I also understand if you want to play the GB crit that goes back to the deck, or the stand that stuns. Play whatever you like. I have tried them and I ended up with the most basic build, which works actually the best. And then of course we have 4 draw PGs, because we didn't play the grade 1 PG, and 4 heals. Okay, talking about the grade 1 PG, you have the one from Darkface. It's really good and does give you a lot of advantage, like it does draw your card, I think, counter charge and soul charge, if I'm not mistaken. Or just counter charge and soul charge, which is still very good. But you really don't want to take space from the grade 1 lineup, because all of your grade 1s are really good, and you even have more. You have more grade 1s that are also very nice, like Discord is also very good. I mean, it gives you soul, draws your card, and generates power, and at the same time it leaves an open regular circle behind it against the right decks. She is good because she gives you a counter charge, and she does also give you power and soul charge. So I mean, there are a lot of good cards that you could choose from, so that's why I just didn't want to take space in my grade 1 lineup, and I ended up with playing the 4 draws. Draws are always nice if you damage check them or drive check them in the early game. In the late game you pretty much have a huge hand. And then we play the starter. Again, you have different starters, but I ended up with the most simple one to use, which is actually the best one to use in my opinion. Okay, let's go through the strides. Of course, we have the start of the deck, which is Zoa. We play her at 1, there is no reason to play more. She is very, very, very good, and she does help you to win. She is most of the time your winning condition, and that's why we love her, and that's why we also play on this playmat. Then I'm playing 2 copies of Overwhelm. Alright, I agree. You actually could play 3. It's really up to you. I'm really waiting for the borderless one from the Revival collection, so that's why I didn't get my 3rd yet. And that's why I now play 2 copies of Stun Beetle. I also don't play the Optirondus in this deck, which is actually very good. It's a very strong card, and you could also play him at 1. So let's say you take the Stun Beetle out to play 1 more Overwhelm, and you take the other Stun Beetle to play the Optirondus. That's an option, but I'm waiting for the Overwhelm to come out, and then I will get my Optirondus, which is a possibility. So 2 overwhelms, she's the card that really give you a lot of advantage, and she's mostly your go-to stride. I mean, you could even play this card at 4 if you want to. I'm playing 2 copies of Stun Beetle. Why? Because I really like this card. From the series, from the anime till now, the skill is actually just so good, and I really like it. Sometimes you could get your opponent off guard with it, but the bad thing about this, it's just GB2 skill, so you can't go into him as a first stride. Maybe if you G-guard first, that's a possibility, but I have taken my opponent off guard with this card. I even say it has a hit ability, but sometimes you just let it hit, or sometimes they just can't guard it, and that is why this card is so good. So of course we have the Zoa, let's also put him right here, and then we have the GB8. It's a very good card, and do not ever think that this card is bad. If you play it at the right time, it also makes your field very strong, and it could destroy some of your opponent decks depending against which deck you play. What is the best card to flip with Overwhelm? Is the Darkface Stride. The Darkface Stride is a good option to put in this deck, especially because it's actually a very good stride, because it does something that the rest of the deck doesn't do, which actually Megacolony should do in the first place. So, stunning your opponent Vanguard. Because this deck actually runs differently, runs with your opponent wanting to call Vanguards but not so much because of her, or just cannot call Vanguards because of Gredora. So it's different than what Megacolony used to be, and that's why this stride is good, because it could bring it back to the original deck. But mostly it's just a good flip target. You could take him out to put anything in here if you want to. I also like to play one Spear. Why? Because he is the only stride that doesn't cast Counterblast, with a GB8 of course, but we're talking about first or second stride. So it's a very good card. Normally you always go for Overwhelm, but if you don't have the Counterblast and there is no way to countercharge, then this is the card that you could use. And that's it for the strides. Then we have the G-Guards. So for the G-Guards, I'm playing one of her. She's good. I don't have her in SP. I would love to have her in SP because I like this card a lot. This is one of the cards, again, that could take your opponent off guard. Why? Because it's just stunning your whole opponent back row, and gaining power is very good. Then we have one of Little Lady. She's good, the flip G-Guard. She sometimes also lets your opponent have a hard decision with the resting or not, but you could also use her when your opponent cannot rest anymore to just draw an extra card, countercharge and soul charge, which is good. Then we play one Desmiel. Yeah, I like this card a lot, especially combining with him, but mostly because sometimes your opponent has a kind of strategy and you could mess with that strategy by using this card. When they want to hit a rearguard and restand, or hit a rearguard and do something, you could use this card. So it's always nice to have him. I almost play him in all of my decks actually, just because it's really good. And then for a bit more power, because most of your G-Guards don't really get power, this is the best one that you could go or use. So it gets a little bit more power, and it does help you to guard those huge attacks. And then I also use some protect markers, of course, and they have to be Spike Brothers, because yeah, I'm playing Spike Brothers. Yeah, I really would like these two, and you need at least 2 markers. One is also sometimes enough. That's actually it for this deck. There is also another take on the deck, and that's the take that Liam did, which is the Gredora with Gize. I could also make that for you guys, but we already have seen 2 deck profiles from Liam on our channel, which is amazing. He's the guy that created the Gredora Gize deck, so that's pretty cool. And we have seen different builds of that, and I enjoy this deck a little bit more. But I could also do that. If I'm doing that, then I need at least 2 copies of Opterondus, because the deck do really abuse Opterondus and more Overwhelms. But yeah, you could do that as well. It could also destroy your opponent with the Antlion, because you could just play 4 copies of Antlion or 4 copies of Gredora if needed, still work. But let's go back to the grade 3s, because I really want to tell you the story about the Darkface. So the original Darkface. Why is this card in SP? There is a story behind it. Some of you guys know Chris Flores, which is Blazing Paladin, the one that actually created Crushing the Meta with me. Alright, so what he did multiple times is he has something with Megacolony. Megacolony has also something with him. What is, I don't know, but they always try to find each other. So sometimes when he opens boosters, he gets the high rarity cards from Megacolony, and then he tried to build the deck, and he built it and he completed it with everything in SP, then he sell the deck. And that happens twice, I think. And then I find this card sitting in Chris Pronk's binder, which is just amazing, because Chris Pronk bought the deck from Flores, and then I got that, and I was like, really? This is Chris Flores' card? So Blazing Paladin's cards, and that's why I went, okay, I need at least one copy of it to put in my deck, because it's just ironic. And again, because it's the card that is, I think, hated the most when you're playing Spark Balloon and you play against this deck. So that's why it's also in here. So that's actually it for me. I'd like to thank you guys for watching, and I hope that you enjoy these kind of deck profiles. It's just decks that I make for fun and really play a lot with, and just to irritate my opponent, especially my friends. Alright guys, till next time.